Hi, I'm Ryan Hunter, and this is Kalispell Connections, a program where we talk about issues important to the community. And with me today is Hilary Shaw, the Executive Director of the Abbey Shelter. Welcome back to the program, Hilary.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Ryan. Hi, Kalispell. Good to see everybody.
So, Hilary, I wanted to have you back on the program because there's been some developments in the world of your world of advocating on behalf of domestic violence survivors. And specifically, I know there's two new positions the Abbey Shelter is supporting court advocates. I was hoping you could speak about those positions and also really the value of court advocates for people who have survived domestic violence situations.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks. I'd be happy to. So the Abbey Shelter is hiring two new positions, one court advocate and one community advocate. So two separate tasks and two very different roles in addressing domestic and sexual violence in our community. So I'll start with the court advocacy one. So our community already has two court advocates, one who works with us at the Abbey Shelter and one who's employed at the county attorney's office. And those two positions have been in existence for a long time. But as the valley has grown, as very steadily rates of reporting for domestic violence have increased over time, the caseload for those two positions has been pretty unmanageable. And this really came to light over the summer when Emily Moeller and her daughter Piper were murdered. There was a lot of attention given to that case. It really shone the spotlight on the benefits that court advocacy can have for survivors when seeking safety through the legal system. And so pretty quickly, the Abbey Shelter started conversations with the sheriff's office and the county attorney's office to add a new position, a third court advocate. And we are really thinking of these three positions, as a triangle. And I say that really to really highlight the metaphor of the strength of this shape, right? That the triangle is one of the strongest shapes. That we see someone housed in the sheriff's department who will be an Abbey Shelter employee, someone housed in the three municipalities serving the three cities, Kalispell, Whitefish, and Columbia Falls, who's also an Abbey Shelter employee, and then the county attorney's office advocate. Those three positions working in partnership, I think will be incredibly powerful to really, increase communication between all those agencies. The advocates will be a bridge between those departments and just more hands so that people don't slip through the cracks. So that's the court advocacy position. And then the Abbey Shelter is also adding another, what we're calling a community advocate, to serve folks who are presenting at the Abbey Shelter with the deepest needs, the most co-occurring barriers, struggling with addiction, struggling with mental health concerns, struggling with domestic violence. That threesome can cause tremendous barriers to safety and well-being for the people that we're serving. And so we decided when we started talking about having an extra pair of hands, we want that population to be the priority for us at the Abbey Shelter so that they can get more services and just really more wraparound care. And one thing with this, Ryan, is as we add the community advocate position, another change that's happening at the Abbey Shelter is we're no longer providing in-house mental health services. So we have had a staff therapist for the past 5 or 6 years, and we're shifting away from that, instead referring clients to other providers in the community, since there are lots of therapists in the community, so that we can focus our advocacy efforts on this different population that needs more care.
And so what's an example, if you could provide an example of the court advocate or the community advocate and kind of what they would typically see with a client, what their role would be as they step forward and advocate for a client?
Yes, so court advocates are spending much of their time helping people with orders of protection. So an order of protection is what most people think of as a restraining order, even though that's actually not the accurate term. And when you are doing the paperwork of an order of protection, it can be kind of confusing. Some people aren't sure if it's the right tool for them. For some survivors of domestic and sexual violence, it can be a really positive tool for safety. For others, it may exacerbate the danger that they're already in, and other measures of safety planning are necessary. Also, once, if that order of protection is granted, what can survivors continue to do to keep themselves safe? What continued safety planning is needed? So that's one thing that the court advocate does, is really guide people through that order of protection process. Another thing that court advocates are intended to do more of is support victims and survivors if there is a case or a trial moving forward. So if their abuser is actually being charged, which, as we know, is far less common than domestic violence incidents, if the abuser is being charged, the task of testifying in front of a jury with your abuser in the room is quite terrifying, and often can be a further barrier to safety for that survivor. And so it's the role of the court advocate. The official term, actually, for a court advocate is victim witness advocate, meaning they're to help victims who are filling the role as witness. So when you have a well-coordinated system, and when you have enough victim advocates or court advocates, survivors may feel more comfortable testifying against their abuser in court. And then you have more convictions, and then it sends a stronger message to abusers in the community that they may want to think twice before abusing their partner. And so that is one goal. That's one potential positive benefit of a court advocate who is really well supported by the whole system. That can help minimize barriers for survivors so that it is safer for them to testify. That's a hope.
Yeah, well, it makes so much sense. And then the other topic I wanted to ask you about is Representative Frank Garner has been a real leader in the state legislature on this issue.
Yes.
And he has legislation this year to increase, making it easier to monitor domestic abusers. Could you speak to his legislation and what that means for your work?
Yes, I can. So first of all, the Abbey shelter is just so grateful for Representative Garner, just fighting the good fight out there in the legislature. And really, I don't know, my observation is that he really remembers our community and holds us close as he legislates on our behalf. So this bill for GPS monitoring is a really positive step forward for domestic and sexual violence issues at the legislative level. And it speaks to a very, very distinct, very specific group of abusers who are being charged with felonies, being charged with felony partner, family member assault, or felony strangulation, felony related domestic violence and sexual violence crimes. And that group of abusers, that demographic, tend to have very high lethality. It's very difficult to be charged with a felony. It's not common. And so this unique group of abusers really needs more monitoring. And so what this bill does is it shifts the burden of proof for mandating GPS monitoring from the prosecution to the defense. So instead of the prosecutors having to ask for it and argue why it's needed, now it's automatic, and instead the defense has to say why it is not necessary, which is often a difficult argument to make. So for survivors who have abusers who are actually being charged with felonies, this will be a really strong step forward for them, but in addition, I'm so happy to see the topic of domestic and sexual violence, active at the legislature. Our leaders are thinking about it, and hopefully it is the first step in, many more bills to come.
It's nice to see more strength in the law when it comes to these issues, because I know it's been an area of concern for a long time, and really a needed needed strengthening of our laws to help protect people in these situations. And I know, both of these situations, as you spoke to a little bit, stem a little bit from the experience in the Valley of the murder of Emily Moeller and Amanda Hilios. Both, cases that really, I think, shocked the Valley and really opened our eyes to this problem of domestic violence. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, somebody who's been working on this a long time and really at the heart of it, what has been your impression about, the impact of those cases in the Valley, and how maybe it shifted the community's perspective and perception of the problem?
Yeah. Um, Gosh, Ryan, what a good thought. So, what comes to mind for me is when there is an event, a domestic violence incident in a community that opens people's eyes to the domestic violence that's occurring, that that doesn't have anything to do with an increase in domestic violence. It just has to do with where those eyes were before. Because domestic violence has been happening in this society since the beginning of time, right? And it actually has not really improved in the last 40 or 50 years. And violence against women is part of the narrative of humans, unfortunately. So, it's an interesting question when something happens and people's eyes are open to the prevalence of domestic violence in our communities. Our role at the Abbey shelter is never to say, "I told you so." It's to say, yes, in essence, welcome to where we live. And, welcome to the world that the Abbey shelter lives in. And we don't expect you to inhabit this world in the same way that we do as domestic violence advocates. And in the meantime, we will support you and we'll help you process this grief. And we're happy to provide education. And I think the side note to that, Ryan, is, and we at the Abbey shelter will keep doing what we do, right? So we're adding 2 new positions. In part, we are able to do that because the community is motivated to support us financially because of the tragedy that we've seen. But we're not changing what we're doing. We're just able to do more of it with more hands. And so I would say that the past year of 2 horrific domestic violence homicides, that is not common. And I do think that the level of violence that we're witnessing is in part due to pandemic factors and pandemic influences. But I don't think there is any more domestic violence than there has ever been. It's just worse right now. And so the experience that the community should be having is not, it should not be, oh, things got so much more intense and now I'm noticing. Things got worse and I'm noticing. It should be, oh, now I'm noticing. And this is the level that it has always been on, right? And there's no shame or blame or anything in that. We don't all need to see every single social issue all the time, or we would be sad all the time. But I guess I'll close this question by saying it's my hope that every time domestic violence and sexual violence issues sit in the spotlight for a little while, that every time they leave the spotlight a little bit less and it becomes a little more a part of our everyday lenses and everyday language and everyday awareness, that we recognize domestic and sexual violence issues as part of the fabric of our culture. And I don't mean fabric as in what we wrap ourselves in, but just what exists.
And it is sad that sometimes it takes those very tragic and horrific events, like we saw in this valley, to bring awareness and
Mm-hmm.
mobilize people. And so, you know, that's the one good thing that can come out of tragedy, at least, is that action, motivation by folks to try to prevent, you know, that from happening more.
Yeah. Yes, it is indeed the opportunity. It's the door that's opened by loss, right? And I also want to say that the act of not really noticing something until it impacts you directly, that's very human. And I think it's important for us as domestic and sexual violence advocates to remember that people aren't ignoring domestic and sexual violence out of anything vindictive. It's just kind of, we see what's in front of us, and other things can be hard to notice. So I'm very grateful that the community has really seen Emily and Piper, and really seen Amanda, and seen their families. That this legislation is coming through 9 months after Emily was killed. That the community is supporting our fundraising efforts for this court advocate position. And anytime people have their eyes open and then take it to the next step of whatever type of action is meaningful to them, that's meaningful to us.
Well, thank you so much, Hilary, for sharing that with us, and best of luck moving forward with all the work you do and your team does. As we've discussed, it's just so important, and I do hope the community continues to be supportive and moving this issue forward, and making progress on trying to curb, you know, the abuse that is happening in our community, and set up the means to lessen it and try to prevent it. So
Great.
yeah, thank you, Hilary.
Thanks, Ryan.